Hello everyone. Welcome back to another video. My name is Matt Schmidt and I guide people to heal themselves. In this video, we're going to be exploring an interesting topic. So we're going to be discussing some of the reasons behind infertility, behind abortions, behind miscarriages, and behind sudden infant death syndrome. So these are the questions I had when I first started doing this, and I've worked with quite a few people and have been able to see things from their perspectives. So, um, I'm just going to start by saying, like, life is a very precious thing, but a lot of times the people that I see are hanging on to the guilt, the shame, the judgment, all these things that go along with experiencing some of these things. And it gets to the point where it actually starts causing physical symptoms in the body because they're hanging on to those heavy emotions. So hopefully this will give you a little bit of perspective if you're trying to navigate some of these areas. All right, so like I said, I've worked with hundreds of people. I work with them in the deepest states of trance where I'm asking them questions and they're coming to their own judgment, their own realizations through what I call higher self. That higher self is an aspect of them that can really tap into everything and see things from a higher perspective. So with infertility, one of the things that I see with that is just in general, basically, you're not meant to have kids in the way that you think at that time. That's a broad generalization, but some people might not like to hear that, but there's a different plan often in place. Sometimes you're not meant to be having kids with that partner. Sometimes it's a timing thing where the kids aren't meant to come into your life at that time for various reasons. And sometimes maybe kids aren't meant to be in your life, period. And that can look different ways. I've had several people where their path to have kids in their life because they really wanted kids, but they weren't able to physically, was to foster kids. There are also cases where their path was to adopt children. So, and that's part of that soul's journey is being adopted by those parents. So they kind of plan that out as well. So even though when people hear that they're not meant to have kids or they don't want to have kids in this lifetime, that's part of their life plan. But just note that nothing's written in stone. That's just a possibility. That's one potential, and it doesn't have to necessarily be like that. All these things are flexible. So if you really want kids and that's really what you want to experience, um, these things are changeable and flexible, and you can ask for those. All right. What I see a lot of times is actually this is almost sort of like an initiation. It's meant to strengthen a relationship and bring two partners together even more. It sounds kind of backwards, but if everything's just handed to you, you don't really learn, you don't really grow. It's just like the 50-year-old person that's still going to their parents' house to get money for groceries because they've never had a job. Okay, they've never had that pressure. They've never had to to learn anything. So when you see it from that perspective, you can totally get a different point of view and a different perspective on those things. All right, which kind of leads us into the next thing. This happens a lot with miscarriages. It's to strengthen that bond, strengthen that relationship with the partner. And going through something like this with a partner can be very bond strengthening and cause that relationship to be stronger and know that they can make it through just about anything going through something like that. All right, not saying this doesn't suck, but you also learn and grow from it. It makes you realize how strong you are. With miscarriages, one of the things that I see a lot of is the timing. Um, the timing's off. This isn't the time that you were meant to have kids in this lifetime, or things had to fall into place before you were given a child. I've even had it be where sometimes people get everything they want right away, so they had to like wait and go through this experience and have a greater appreciation on the other side of things. All right. That's one of the other things is sometimes that experience of loss. You know, you're carrying. It's a powerful thing to go through, and there's not really any exchange for that. You know, like it's one of those things you just have to experience. You can't be like, oh, I read a book about that. I understand what loss is. No, you don't. Not until you've actually gone through that. And going through an experience like that causes you to appreciate that child even more when that child arrives, rather than just taking it for granted. What I see in my work is sometimes a lot of the emotions that carry over from this. With the infertility, people start questioning, oh, is there something wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Did I do something wrong? Um, did I not eat something right? I don't know. Was it because of this that I was exposed to? Or there's a lot of like guilt and shame and even that sadness of the loss part. And a lot of times people are carrying those emotions with. Just know there's no judgment. It's not seen that way from a higher perspective. So releasing those emotions and not hanging on to those emotions is important. It's okay to feel that way, just don't stay there. Right? I see a lot of emotions around abortions. There's a lot of judgment. Just know that there's no judgment. Judgment is a human thing. You're just here for the experiences. There's no good, there's no bad. There's just experiences. The only bad thing is the experience that you don't learn from. So that's a total human thing. And going through something like an abortion, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of sadness, maybe resentment, anger, even punishing yourself. Oh, I deserve this because I did this terrible thing. And you end up like creating these physical symptoms in your body because you think what you did was shameful or wrong. Just know that it's not seen that way from a higher perspective. It's all just very matter of fact when we take a step back and we look at that higher perspective. And we'll talk about that in a second. Sometimes it's a timing issue. That soul wasn't meant to come into that life at that time. Or maybe it's a situation issue. That would have been a terrible environment for that kid to grow up in, and that wasn't desired anyway. So the cool part about the work that I do is I actually get to talk to the soul that was planning on coming in. A lot of times I find out that there wasn't even a soul attached to the body. It was just like an empty vessel because they knew that this was going to happen or was a high probability of this happening before it even happened. So they don't even attach a soul to that body knowing that was part of the plan. That brings me to another point. We can't agree in science on when a soul enters a body, but I get to ask it. So when people are in this deep relaxed state, they can connect to everything, and I get to ask the soul when it comes into a body. A lot of times, that soul didn't even come into the body until after the baby is born, or they're going back and forth, back and forth. So there's not a lot of learning going on by being in the womb. That being said, the baby is still energetically connected to the mother and experiencing things on an energetic level, even though that soul hasn't fully inhabited that body. So it can still experience the emotions that the mom took on. And you can check out my other video on healing the trauma from in the womb, which I posted a couple weeks ago. All right, so it's important, yeah, not to carry all these emotions forward and stuff with these things. There's no judgment around these things, but we're really hard on ourselves, and there's a lot of self-judgment when we go through something like this. The other thing I want to talk about was sudden infant death syndrome, and we don't know why this happens medically, but there's always a reason when I do the work that I do, and talking to those souls, a lot of times they have like a window where they get to try out a life, see how it fits. If that's not a good fit, they have a choice to leave the body. And it really is that simple. I don't think a lot of people know that or recognize that, but yeah, when I've asked, it's like, yeah, that wasn't a good fit, so the soul left. It was just so matter of fact. There are other things around that with the family experiencing that loss and lessons tied to the loss, but basically it's just a choice of the soul wanting to leave. And they try not to have this happen so much. They try and make sure there's a good fit beforehand, but it still happens. All right, now it's from the soul's perspective. Going through one of these experiences never prevents a soul from coming into a lifetime if it wants to. So I get to ask these souls what they do afterwards. Sometimes it is your child later in life. They decide to come back when later at a later point, and that is your child now. Sometimes they stay on the other side to be a guide. Like I mentioned too, sometimes the soul's not even attached to that body. But if a soul is attached to that body to experience something like this, a lot of times this is like the soul wanted to experience a human life. And the easiest way to get a taste for this or experience this is to go into the life, even if it's a short one or one that doesn't, or in a soul that isn't born. So this is kind of the equivalent of test driving a car. So sometimes it wants to try out this experience and kind of adjust to life coming to Earth because Earth is a tough place. So it wants to try this out for size before it makes that commitment to come into a full lifetime. All right. So yeah, I'd love to hear your comments on stuff and if you've had these experiences. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. All right, we'll see you on the next video.